bonsai is a tree that has been pruned and trained and is growing in a container or on a slab rather than in the ground. The word bonsai also signifies the art of dwarfing such trees through pruning and training techniques to create pleasing compositions in which the trees appear to have aged in nature. Any tree can be styled as a bonsai. There is no special bonsai species. There's something that many of us can appreciate about bonsai trees. We own a piece of nature in a form that feels out of reach. Possibly, maybe, we own small trees because it makes us feel larger than we really are. But even if there is some kind of toxic reasoning behind the popularity of bonsai trees, I think most of us would agree that it's innocent in its scale. This ideology, however, it seems to be able to take us to a dark place. Maybe we can own the natural world. Larry Fink answers during a lunch where all of his employees and friends ponder on how to increase profits for their investors. The current composition of land ownership isn't appealing enough to their liking. This video is largely based on and inspired by Whitney Webb and Mark Goodwin's article on Unlimited Hangouts. You can find the link in the description. Today, wealth inequality rivals the time of ancient pharaohs. But Larry Fink and his friends have decided that they need more. What I've described to you in the intro is not a real scenario. At least I sincerely hope it isn't. But why do these people feel like they can legally own the natural world? Bonsai trees are entirely dependent on the care and maintenance. Any tree can be styled as a bonsai. There is no special bonsai species. But I don't think people would really enjoy a world where governments use lawyers, or corporations rather, use lawyers and scientists to own and create exclusive rights to pieces of the natural world. The Indians probably laughed at the white man who came over and quote-unquote bought the land, but there was still a limit to even their endeavors. I remember like a Dave Chappelle skit where he was talking about how the Indians sold land and said, hey, would you guys like the sky too? And if the Indians decided to ask that to Larry Fink today, it almost seems like Larry Fink would ponder that thought a bit more than what we'd really consider. The government, many of us think of them as our saving grace in terms of really stopping a lot of this insanity that goes on, and they would surely stop Larry Fink before him and his friends find a way to own quote-unquote biological systems that provide clean air, water, food, medicines, a stable climate, human health, and societal potential. Right? Well, just a spoiler alert, my short answer is no. But I think maybe I can convince you to come to the same conclusion by telling you a little bit about Larry Fink and his history in government. Because Larry Fink, he's a co-founder and chairman and CEO of Blackrock. Now, from what I gather, Blackrock is this controversial multinational investment company that is very much interested in robbing the population blind. It seems Larry has grown accustomed to controlling things contrary to common sense or even legality. Larry Fink was fired for interest rate manipulation, where his desk lost $100 million in the second quarter of 1986. For everyone, that's about $300 million in today's money. So many of you guys would think that this would completely ruin a person's career in finance. And I agree. I think in an ideal world, Larry may be in prison. And the problem is that's not this world that we live in. Larry Fink would go on to co-found Blackrock and help them snuggle close to government. Just to help you understand just how close Larry is to government. In 2011, right after raising the debt ceiling, Larry was the Treasury Secretary's second call. In the economic crisis of 2008 and 2020, he led BlackRock as they found a way to profit while everyone suffered. It's important here to note, for some odd reason we know about the 2008 bailouts, but not the 2020 COVID bailouts for Wall Street. But I digress. In 2023, BlackRock named JP Morgan as their quote-unquote authorized participants. And this was right after, or about a year after, JP Morgan was caught in a scheme that would have given them quote-unquote the power to manipulate the worldwide price of gold. At some point, BlackRock was fined for not accurately describing investments and failing to disclose conflicts of interest. It was also sued $340,000, this is a direct quote, to settle charges that it improperly used separation agreements in which exiting employees were forced to waive their ability to obtain whistleblower awards. Another quote, this one directly from Larry: markets don't like uncertainty. Markets like actually totalitarian governments. Democracies are very messy. I think this guy reminds me a lot of Peter Thiel.
Maybe the single overarching theme is that we think of capitalism and competition as synonyms, and I believe they are antonyms. I believe that a capitalist is someone who's in the business of accumulating capital. A world of perfect competition is a world where all the profits are competed away.
And despite all this controversy, I think Peter Thiel was, as well as Larry and BlackRock, but in particular, we'll talk about Larry and BlackRock. They maintain significant levels of influence in our society. They've gotten slaps on the wrist along the way, and I'll be honest, it almost seems like it really does appear like the government's putting on this very weak show to seem like they are really upholding some sense of moral consistency when it comes down to crimes in general. But in general, I think we need to understand something. If you've been rewarded every step of the way or throughout your career, even as a financial criminal, right? I want you to understand that these guys could have very well come to the conclusion that as long as they acquire more for the people who are wealthy and powerful in our society, then they will be rewarded, regardless of legality. Sometimes crossing the line actually works in favor of those who want to serve.
You were joining this secret club.
Right.
You got to be made.
Yes.
You're a made man in the mafia. Only if we have compromise on you do you get ahead.
Now, with the bonsai tree, you have to use certain tools to kind of convince the tree that it's really growing naturally, even though it may not be. Now, with Larry Blackrock and friends, they have to be creative. Environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, investing led to backlash from the public after it was found that really there was all types of schemes going on under the guise of green initiatives and green financing. Apparently, there are a lot of companies who find ways to greenwash their activities to gain financing when they really shouldn't be eligible at all. In this article, they discuss how, particularly the Nature Conservancy, and that this is on its face, this idea of the Nature Conservancy, it's what many of us would guess by the name, right? It's technically an environmental nonprofit. But this is apparently really a front for Wall Street banks to test out a host of green finance initiatives. Its current board, it includes top executives from JP Morgan, Santander, the Carlyle Group, and Goldman Sachs. And until just a few years ago, Larry Fink himself was on the Nature Conservancy's board. Now, we already mentioned how JP Morgan could have already been very much interested in the idea of manipulating the price of golds and precious metals, but I think in terms of our history of being in alignment with this idea and this concept of quote-unquote owning the natural world, we really get a lot of insight from the idea of the IMF and the World Bank. This idea of the IMF and the World Bank, they basically take our tax dollars and use that to help enslave other countries. And this isn't so the people in our population get any sort of wealth, it's for the corporations. So they're doing evil and with our money, and we aren't the ones to see any type of benefit in any case. So it's already this book by Alex Gladstein, it talks about a lot of different kind of concepts here. Now, this book talks all about the monstrosity, but given this article, it's important that we really point out that Alex may not be correct in the assumptions that crypto will be some kind of solution to the IMF and the World Bank and what's happening with what's happened through the IMF and the World Bank. Blackrock seems to be taking advantage of this idea because they are very much in the conversation to reimagine the IMF and the World Bank into something that fits the new world and frees up to quote-unquote $4 trillion in climate change funding. This idea of crypto and the government, and this new system, this is a mechanism to control the populace. This new hunger for this idea of crypto, it's not going to go away, right? And this is the copper, the aluminum, that's going to shape the rest of the world the way they want it, right? Because when we create systems of finance and currency that's controlled by the government, it won't be the same landscape. You won't be able to do what you want to do in a lot of cases. Elon Musk rolled out a X score on Twitter. And he did that within like with the snap of a finger. People often made the comparison of Donald Trump to this idea of JFK because he talked about ending wars. And I'll tell you this, he looks like the exact opposite. That's why he's able to do what he's able to do. That's why Elon is able to get away with what he's able to get away with. There was no Doge regarding the actual government, regarding the actual government waste, fraud, and abuse that really happens, right? Because the Department of Defense, that's an easy, what do you say, a target-rich environment. There was none of that. Because he serves the donor class just like everybody else. Now, the problem when it comes down to crypto being this idea of shaping us, shaping the world, is that these guys, Larry Fink in particular, they seem to love this potential in digital currency. But they want to tie it to quote-unquote highly regulated markets. And these same highly regulated markets are the same ones that allowed Blackrock to profit in 2008 and 2020. They want to tokenize nature. They want to essentially give quote-unquote loans to other countries and to other countries, and basically in exchange for they're putting up their natural land as collateral. So this idea of what's happening now, it doesn't stop here. It doesn't just, like this idea of owning land, something, but the things that the land produces, right? When you start getting into that question of owning the natural land, owning the tree, owning the things that come off of the tree, these things become a lot scarier. And especially when you think about how they can really employ scientists and everybody else, and what they would try to do to control their particular land, to essentially buffer themselves in terms of the idea of clean air and clean water. It's not it's not a pretty picture, I'll say. And these guys right now, the tech guys, they want to move fast and break society. This idea of what we're looking at today, it looks to be that. It looks to be ripe for them to do that. I think we're supposed to really hear what's the plan and really assume that Larry Fink and the government have turned over a new leaf without facing any consequences for what they've done and encouraged in the past. This system, what's happening, we got this idea of these people, where society is, and we think that things can't get too much worse. And I am sorry to tell everyone, but it can get worse. And it not only it can get worse, these insane people who rule us are looking to make things get worse. They are actively looking for ways to make things worse. And we need to understand this idea, right? Because what composition are these lunatics really looking for? The paradise that's being envisioned by these guys. I think Matt Kern really encapsulates it through his investigations and journalism in this book called Silent Coup, right? Because he gives some really enlightening insight into these particular ideas of corporate utopias. And in these places, to the rest of the population, the surrounding population, these utopias are basically just cities within cities, right? And they advertise in some places. I want to say it's somewhere in Asia, but I'm not sure exactly where. It could be in India somewhere, but I'm not sure exactly where. But they advertised clean air. I think we all, or a lot of us at least, might see the appeal in owning something like a bonsai tree. But I think most of us would agree that this concept of owning nature that's proposed by people like Larry Fink, Blackrock, and friends, they're going a bit too far. Now, the Unlimited Hangouts article is going to be listed in the description, and it goes into more detail about these particular entities, about what exactly is behind these entities, and how they're particularly moving. But I am learning more about like just creating impactful and aesthetic content. So please let me know what you think in the comments. In any case, thank you for listening, and have a lovely day.